Do you want your art to finally feel expressive? Stop blending and start placing bold brushstrokes just like Van Gogh. I'll teach you his exact techniques, just like this, but kind of make it your own. My name is Dimitra Milan, and I've been a professional artist for over 10 years. And I promise by the end of this workshop, you'll know how to loosen up and mix colors optically on the canvas. Plus, I have a free workbook with creative prompts and a supply list so you can re-watch this anytime. Click the link in the description. Okay, so you can take a big brush, and these are just 5 acrylic transparent colors, and I'm going to start light to dark and just map out the composition a little bit. This part is just super quick, and it's just to get a base down. And I'm definitely going to be sticking to this color story here. You guys can also, in the workbook, have access to this photo as well, so you can paint to this exact scene. I'm going to be doing a gold and purple color story, and it's just a really great complementary combo, so yeah, I'm just going to stick with those colors. So the colors don't have to match exactly. This is just a base, and it's just to get a general, quick start to your painting. I'm gonna share with you some tips on creating a good composition coming up very shortly. I think starting with a big brush like this automatically helps you loosen up and not take it so serious. So you can get so many big, different brush strokes with this brush, and try just using it lots of different ways. So in this stage, you're basically getting all the white gone, pretty much, and you want to get all your midtones in. So I've just done that quick stain, and now I'm going back in and getting a little bit of the darks. It'll just be easier for the next layers that we add. So after this, I'm gonna move into oil paint, let this dry a little bit, and then I will also be adding oil pastels. So this is a 3-part process, but it'll be a lot of fun. You guys can, of course, take your time with this. So I definitely want to move up the horizon line because I'm noticing I kind of have it in the middle here. So I'm going to add some mountains or something back here. And again, this is supposed to be expressive and more whimsical, so you can loosely go off of this picture and kind of create your own landscape. You don't have to stick to everything in the photo. So I'm just gonna go back in with a smaller brush and add some little bit of detail. So I'm not really concerned about the Van Gogh style as of yet. This is just looking at this and looking at the darks and lights and trying to just get that blocked in. So all the little brush strokes and the fun kind of Van Gogh style will be added in the next layer. So as it's kind of fading back into the horizon, you want your trees to get smaller. Just keep that in mind so that you give your painting a lot of depth. That's very important for a landscape. So I am adding kind of in these darker patches here in the foreground. I'm trying to purposely add things in a more like directional mark making way with my brush strokes. So leaving the brush strokes, not blending that much, just kind of placing a brush stroke and then letting it be. So you can start to do that. And it works well if you have a lot of paint on your brush. It doesn't work if you have a thin amount of paint. So make sure that you're generous with the paint. And I'm just looking at all these little patches of shadows, and I want to make this path stand out a little bit. So a landscape composition, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it, but there are a few rules. But basically, you just want to keep leading the eye around, and you really have to be careful about the viewer feeling boxed in with the landscape. So you want room to breathe and kind of escape. You have to go deep into the painting. A lot of times I'll see like artists want to do a forest, and then it's just this like whole block of trees, and there's no path into the background, or there's no way to really get through the painting, so it just feels very closed off. So make sure that you have some sky showing and some light peeking through, and then adding a path I think always helps, so that it feels inviting, and subconsciously the viewers, wanting to like step into the painting more. And I'm going to do a lot of dry brushing so that I'm keeping the texture showing in the canvas. Dry brushing, if you don't know, is you get a good amount of paint on your brush and you just kind of hold it parallel to the canvas like this, and it's going to pick up the canvas texture. So I'm trying to be still as loose as possible with this layer and just getting kind of the feeling of the landscape in. This is a very abstracted version of this photo. So every layer will get a little bit more refined, but I still want to keep some playfulness to it, so we won't get too exact or too refined with it. So you could spend longer in this stage if you really enjoyed it and you love acrylics. You could do the whole painting in acrylics if you want and kind of use the same technique. If you were to do that, I would get a lot more acrylic paint out. I'm only using a super basic set right now. So I will move on to the slides and just quickly talk about composition and give you guys some tips for creating a Van Gogh style painting. So I mentioned before, what makes a really good landscape is leading the eye around, and you can look at and refer to the golden ratio if your composition is something you struggle with. Some artists just have a naturally good composition. Like, we all have this feeling within us when we're painting. We know sometimes something will feel right or something will feel off, and that's because we all have this sense of the golden ratio. So basically everything that you see in the natural world is a 1 to 1.6 ratio. And it's really, really interesting if you dive into the science of that. It really applies to good painting, good composition in paintings. So you can have if you really want to get into it, you can put that overlaid over your painting if you want, or your source. But a lot of times it'll just happen naturally. So if you basically just think about the rule of thirds, so dividing your painting into 3 sections, and if you have something kind of line up with this third of the canvas, and then this third of the canvas, and then also horizontally. So if your horizon line kind of falls on this plane right here or down here, that's going to be very pleasing to the eye. So anything that's like symmetrical or in the middle is going to feel really off to us and just, not feel right. So those paintings are harder to sell. So if you want to create more sellable artwork, they really pay attention to this. So building a color story is also very crucial, very important to creating a good landscape painting. in a good painting in general. So choosing that ahead of time will help you guys, especially if you're someone who just loves all the colors and your paintings might turn into a big rainbow. It's really great to choose a color story ahead of time. Sometimes that just starts with the source that you choose. So this source has a lot of golden light and purple, kind of bluish tones. So it's a great purple and gold color story. And you can see this painting right here is also going off of that. I love all the colors in that. Sometimes laying off of it, so switching the colors slightly, is how you can create a more unique edge to it or make it more your own. So you don't have to stick to strictly purple and yellow colors, but kind of adding some of this lime green that feels like a yellow or peachy tones, shifting the colors a little bit will create a more interesting painting. So it really sets the mood of your painting. So don't take this lightly. Just think about if you want like a morning feeling landscape or an evening or afternoon. You can do a blue and orange color story or a red and green. So those three bases are really like the foundation of what I'm talking about, and then you can kind of make up your own from there or add to it. So something that we will get into next with the oil paint and the pastels is what's called optical color mixing. So that is not necessarily mixing the right shade that you want on your palette, but mixing it on your painting where you place two colors next to each other. So far away, it will read as the color that you intended, and up close, it'll just create this very, I don't know, like it has like a vibration to it. Like both colors are, basically this picture here really explains it well. So far away, that reads as like a green color, and then up close, it's like moving a lot where you have the blue and yellow next to each other. So this is what Van Gogh did a lot with his paintings, and just overall this impressionist style of artwork. They did a lot of optical mixing on the canvas. So I would encourage you guys to give that a try and try not to mix too much, like finding that perfect shade on your palette, and just explore mixing different colors or putting different colors next to each other. So that's gonna create a very interesting look. And then lastly, you can, again, if you study his paintings, and there's a lot of great books out there. This one is one I picked up recently, and it shows really detailed pictures of his artwork. You can see how his marks are very expressive, and they go with the form of what he was painting. So the grass, for example, is going in these straight kind of lines. The flowers are more like a dot that's turned or kind of placed in like a circular feeling brushstroke. You want to pay attention to the movement of your brushstrokes, and that's captured when you just place your paint and leave it alone and not blend. So that's really important for this whole technique. If you want your paintings to kind of have that essence of that impressionist feel to it, then you can just really have fun with this and play around with the movement of your marks. And think of your paint as leaving your mark on the canvas. So it's not just using a pastel and like leaving the marks, that's easy to do, but also apply that same principle to your paint. Ideally, let your painting completely dry before you move on to oil, and then you can use this acrylic underpainting to your advantage. I have a pretty balanced palette of like all the colors here, and I'm gonna mix some of this medium Gogh into my paint because it'll help the paint dry faster. Sometimes I pour this just directly on the palette, but it's very liquidy, so if you have a little cup for it, that's best. And then I have a solvent here to clean the brushes. So again, I'll start with a bigger brush. So the next stage to this process is glazing your painting. And what that means is just taking transparent colors and mixing it with this glazing medium, just kind of going over an area, and it's gonna stain that area and kind of make it more unified. So I wanna make sure that all the darks are in there, because anytime you go to paint, I think it's important to kind of see your painting in these layers, and having a lot of this as the underpainting, you need this darker base to add all these little highlights on top of it. So in order for those highlights to stand out, it needs that darker base. I'm gonna just start glazing, and let's start with the background. So just a little bit of glazing has already helped the painting so much. I started using some warm up here, but then I switched to using the cool oil colors, and that's gonna help, you know, push things back into the background. And I'm also just focusing on, like, thinking about the base of the trees. A lot of times your trees might feel like they're floating, and by adding a darker base to it, it's gonna ground them better. So this step is very important, and the painting might feel a little bit dark for you, like darker than you want it, but it's a crucial step because you need that dark layer first. Yeah, now I'm gonna switch to some brighter colors. So this is a little rule in landscape specifically. If you have a lot of green that you're working with, the more grungy or dirty looking green that you have, the more beautiful it will look like on your canvas. This kind of warm green that I'm mixing, this is sap green out of the tube, which is pretty, but if you just use that plain by itself, it can be just a little too bright and kind of garish looking. A little bit of a complementary color, so this burnt sienna that's kind of reddish mixed in creates a very beautiful kind of earthy green. That's just a little tip. I don't ever like to use like phthalo green out of the tube. You always want to mix some kind of complementary color into it. All of that was an underpainting to kind of get to this point. Now this stage can take a long time. You can really take your time with this. Just having a good thin tip at the top will help you get more detailed strokes, but using different sized round brushes I think are the best for this technique. But you can of course experiment, try different brushes. Maybe you have some favorite brushes. Filberts can work, but you're definitely gonna wanna stick to smaller sized brushes for this. I'm just gonna be working with the cool colors. So I'm leaving some space between the brush strokes so that you can still see that blue underneath, and that's just gonna create more interest for these clouds. You can, again, just try different patterns or little marks. You can kind of do like a swirly type brush stroke, or you're just kind of leaving a ton of little brush strokes next to each other. And you do have to exaggerate the color a bit and kind of make up with the mixing optically. I'm adding this kind of reddish brown color next to the blue, and so far away it kind of looks grayish here, but up close it has some movement and contrast to it. So think about all your brush strokes as layers, and like these highlights on top are just sitting right on top. I'm not mixing them in. So you can see the colors next to it. And for this style of painting, you can do this, like you can do like 3 layers of this technique and create a lot of interesting brush strokes and depth to it. So this is just, you're seeing the first layer of this painting. So right here you can really see how the glazing layer of that kind of burnt sienna color is helping me as I lay these kind of orange, yellow, opaque brush strokes on top. So it's not making the paint muddy, it was the perfect base to kind of create that more glowing effect or give it more contrast. So usually with this technique, if you want to break it down to be a little bit more simplified, you can do like a once over with your bigger round brush to get those bigger like base brush strokes, and then either after this is dry, or if you want to just, continue painting carefully, you can take the smaller round brush and place more thinner, detailed strokes on top. Just creating a lot of layers with this look, you'll achieve that kind of Van Gogh style. You might notice I'm mixing a tiny bit of Gogh into these opaque colors, and you don't have to do that, but depending on your paint, like mixing this in with the paint, I want the consistency to be a little bit thinner, but not too thin, because if you add too much of the Gogh, it'll start to get really milky, and you will not like that. It can make your colors muddy. So just be careful when you are mixing this into your opaque paint. But just adding a little bit is helping me apply these kind of thinner brush strokes. So every brush can create, lots of different types of marks. You can see this cloud is starting to be kind of swirly, and try using your brush lots of different ways. You'll get more variety in your brush strokes. And so far this is all cool colors, so should be receding into the background. I'm just gonna keep adding this sunlight kind of peeking through. So what I love about using our vivid oil paint is it's mixed with our fast drying white. These very opaque, bright colors here, they dry fast, so you don't have to mix anything into them. You can use them by themselves, and I think they're really perfect for this technique. So I definitely think there's benefits to working wet on wet like this, so having this kind of wet, glazed base. Your brush strokes will blend a little bit into it, but it looks, you can still keep that really dramatic effect of layering these brush strokes on top, because it's not mixing into the color underneath, you're just placing it on top. So right here, I wanted to draw our eye to that little, like the sun peeking through. So adding little tiny brush strokes and lots of bright popping colors here is how I'm trying to do that. Any oil pastels will do. This is one of my favorite, this is my favorite brand I've tried, but I think this is one of the top quality oil pastels you can buy. Carandosh, and I have the big set here. So a lot of nice colors to work with, and I'll just show you quickly. So taking a big area like this that needs a lot of interesting brush strokes, you can start by doing pastels. You can also finish this technique like after this whole thing's dry, then add pastels. You can use them at any point because these are oil. Yeah, they can mix nicely in with the colors that you have. So with this technique and kind of making it your own, you have to find what marks feel right for you, and you just gotta kind of let go and have fun with it. And this is gonna get you guys to loosen up, but it does help standing so that you're not feeling too controlled with it. And just try moving your hand really quickly and like not letting go or not stopping and thinking about it. So you can do like scribbly marks, you can do kind of like loopy marks, or you want to try lots of different things. And layering the pastels, just like the paint, will give it that contrast. This is very important, to have your brush strokes and your pastel marks all going different directions and kind of going with the form or the movement that you want people to feel, basically, what makes sense with the painting. So for example, the light coming down here, then I would want these strokes, like the final layer, to be coming this way. All this in the foreground is kind of, I think, makes sense to go straight up and down. If you want like a flat kind of feeling field that recedes, then you can do diagonal marks like this, so it feels a bit more flat. So just keep that in mind, add lots of variety. Sometimes you can like kind of just push down and stamp with your pastels. I think this area though really shows like how important it is to have that dark underneath so that your strokes on top will really come forward. And it just gives your painting more depth to it. So you definitely don't have to apply the same brush strokes or have all this texture covering your entire canvas. I think if you do have a good majority of it though, then it will be obvious that you were inspired by this Van Gogh style. So it all depends on like how you want to apply it. There's so many different like ways you can apply this into your own work. Yeah, and if you have really enjoyed this technique and want to learn more, then you should definitely check out the mastery program. And it's just our one-year course we put so much focus and time on, and have literally filled it with all the techniques that my mom and I know. So this technique and so many others you'll learn in the mastery program. And yes, it's just a very, very in-depth, life-changing experience. And we really focus a lot on like what I was talking about today, working in layers, and how you saw this painting come to life through many different stages and layers, working the whole piece at once. That's like the foundation and core of what we teach and how we help artists get so skilled so fast, help them become so skilled. So by working in this kind of layering technique. So if you guys are stuck while doing this technique and you don't know what kind of brush strokes to do, because I did a few of these style of paintings on my own for fun, and I was just like, okay, how many types of brush strokes can I do? I want to add all the variety. So looking at Van Gogh's paintings has helped me a lot, and just trying to see like, I don't know, like how he takes certain plants and certain objects, or the skies especially. I really love how he does skies. And if you want like a more calming sky, you can see some of his paintings, he does leave big brush strokes. So someone was asking, can you do this technique with bigger brush strokes? And you definitely can. Some of it looks more like pointillism. So you probably use like a very small brush or pastels only, I don't know. You can definitely just, I love like on this painting, all the little kind of squiggly S shapes he makes for bushes. And I've noticed he's done that with like cypress trees. Yes, just looking at his art more, it'll definitely inspire you guys to give his technique a try and be more expressive with your brush strokes. So now you've experienced just a small taste of what it feels like to paint with freedom and emotion. You've seen how just one new technique can completely shift your confidence on the canvas. Imagine what would happen if you did this with real mentorship, real community, and a full curriculum step by step. That's exactly why we created the Mastery Program. We take you step by step through drawing, oil painting, and mixed media techniques. We teach you how to create your own body of work and show you how to sell your artwork. If you're serious about developing your own unique voice and style, then you definitely should check out the Mastery Program. It's not just about painting, it's about stepping into the artist you're always meant to be.